and he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. You can follow the show on Instagram at AOP Podcast. We got some content going up there all the time, both betting for NFL, betting for NASCAR, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So make sure you check that out. Hit the follow button, all that stuff. But joining me to break down yet another NASCAR race, it's the man, the myth, the legend. It's Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
What's up, Kyle? We finally got a Denny Hamlin win last week.
Yep.
And thank the Lord I actually bet it, because it never fails. We always seem to miss out on these winning tickets, but I kept riding the train just knowing that it was eventually going to happen, and he got his win. He's safely on to the round of 8 now, or round of 12 now. So
yeah.
Hamlin futures are looking good right now.
100%. And we told you guys to bet him last week. I want to throw up the odds from last week. Have the odds up for the Cup Championship currently at DraftKings. So before last race, he was, where is he at?
7.5 to 1.
7.5 to 1. Now he's number 2 at 4 to 1. Chase Elliott is now 7 to 1. Truex is now 7 to 1. Or I guess he's the same. Kyle Busch is 8.5. So there's been some movement for sure. Kyle Busch at 8.5 actually really like, and might actually jump in at that. And after you watch our breakdown of this week's race, you'll have an even stronger opinion. But yeah, I think there's some value there for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting getting these guys that are falling lower down the board, but that are such good drivers. Like we talked about with Hamlin last week. I mean, He had been one of the top 4 or 5 best drivers all season.
Yeah.
And when you can get a future on him at almost 8 to 1, I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Brian, obviously you can't win. It's impossible for him to win a race because he hadn't done it yet.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, it was good to see Denny perform well. It was a fun race to watch. Enjoyed it. And we're on to the Federated Auto Parts 400 at Richmond Motor Speedway. I'm going to throw up the initial odds. Some interesting numbers, a lot tighter betting board this week, especially at the top. Truex, Hamlin are your favorites, followed quickly by Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, and Kyle Larson, who at plus 750, like I'm gonna bet. Like I know his history at this track is not the same as some of the other people that are in front of him, but like we've had this happen a couple times this year where he was like 5th or 6th in the betting order, and I feel like he's won every time that's happened.
Yeah, he was the first guy that jumped out to me. The fact that he had went from being the favorite, I think, in 3 consecutive races to 5th in this list based solely on his history here, but it's really not that bad when you go back and you look. I mean, prior to this season's race, he had finished in the top 10 in 4 of the last 5, and they were all 7th or better, and he's even won here back in 2017. So it's not like he can't race at this track, and he's with a better team this year that has been shown the entirety of the 2021 season that he has been the fastest car, the best driver amongst the entirety of the field. So to get somebody like him at that number based on history and maybe what has been happening, he's a guy for winning tickets that I'll be on, because I'll be skipping over the Hamlins. Now that he's got his win, I'm not banking on another one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like you can look at his numbers too. Like Martinsville, another short track, started 19th, finished 5th. Richmond, obviously a little bit different, but started 6th and finished 18th. Didn't finish the race 2 laps down, so obviously had a ton of issues. Hard to bank on that happening 2 races in the same season. So at plus 750, it's really hard for me to not say to not at least have something involved there. Beyond him, is there any other names in terms of the outrights you're looking at this week?
It's getting really dicey now that we're getting a little bit later in the season. I mean, they were talking about it last week when Ross Chastain was leading the race, that there's been, I think, one driver that has not been in the field of 16 since they've implemented the playoffs to win a race during the 3 races of the field of 16. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah, so I mean, like a guy like Austin Dillon, who I really like this week, as we'll see going forward in the show, at 50-1. I mean, those are great odds, but you have all these guys near the back end of the playoff rankings right now who are trying to jockey for position. Those wins are so crucial because they guarantee your advancement in the playoffs. So, like it's hard. I kind of like Alex Bowman at 18-1, but of late, he's been running into a lot of issues. A lot of friendly fire has been happening with the Hendrick cars. So,
yeah, no, he's been frustrating. I was on him last week. I had it outright in a top 5, and I mean, between you and William Byron and me and Alex Bowman, those tickets were dead within a few laps of the race starting. So that was always fun.
Yeah,
I like your Austin Dillon call. Obviously, we'll talk about him when we head over to DK. He's currently plus 130 to top 10. I like that a lot. You can get even a little more aggressive and look at a top 5 perhaps. And that's 7-1. So if you wanna back Austin Dillon but not necessarily take the outright because of the stuff Brian was talking about, I think both those numbers make a ton of sense. I do like Kyle Busch at plus 650. If I do make outrights, I think Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch will be the 2 bets that I roll with this week.
Yeah, I was just gonna say too. I'm not gonna bet it because every time I do it, it'll never happen. But I mean, Joey Logano is one of the best drivers on these kinds of tracks, and he's been racing pretty damn good of late. Just I can't pick him because he'll crush my soul if I do so.
Yeah, well, see, the thing is, Brian, if you're on him and I'm not, then he does okay. If I'm on him and you're not, he does okay. But if we're both on him, because I wanted to be on him, but like I felt bad for Joey Logano and his family, so I didn't want to do that to him. The one thing I will say is I'm looking at FanDuel. If you have access to it, he's plus 950 over there. And Kyle Larson's plus 850. I think at plus 950, if you have access to FanDuel, I think a Joey Logano bet would be fired off on my end. Chase Elliott's 11. Like FanDuel is like giving us all the value this week.
Yeah, they're giving away free money if you can get in on those.
So that's why it's always really, really important to shop it and look for options, look for odds. Truex is 9-1 over there. Kyle Busch is 10-1 over there to win the championship. So, interesting. Shop it, look around, find numbers that you like. Brian, beyond outrights, is there any other top 5, top 10 bets you're looking at that could present some value? Your boy William Byron, maybe a nice rebound. He's 2-1 to finish in the top 5. I can't get to Ryan Blaney. Like I feel like the magic he had in that final couple races is kind of worn out.
Yeah, I mean, he won those 2 consecutive races, but much like a Logano, a Kurt Busch, who we've seen put together strings of success, they then revert back to the wide range of outcomes that we get from them on a weekly basis, and it's really hard to bank on them finishing, a top 10 or a top 5 or anything like that.
Yeah.
And in the top 10 market, you said it, I said it, I liked him at the huge number, but I think Austin Dillon is somebody that I can get on a top 10 with plus money. I mean, he's got 4 of the last 5 races here have been top 10s at Richmond. He's finished 10th last week at the Southern Cookout Southern 500, however you want to say it. He's not in the playoffs, but I mean, these guys, they still make money depending on the kind of finishes that they're getting. And I think he makes a lot of sense at plus money inside the top 10.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we can use it as a nice little transition into your DFS score where Mr. Austin Dillon makes an appearance. Talk to me about the other names that are in there and kind of your thoughts on why you're leaning towards those people.
Well, I'm really going Chase Elliott here because of the Hendrick drivers. I feel like he's been the second most successful guy outside of Kyle Larson, and he's of the group, he's probably the second best driver. We know he's eventually going to turn it on. He's going to make it into the next round of the playoffs, but he's a guy who he doesn't want to race from the middle of the pack. He's going to want to race up near the front. And I think that Chase Elliott is that guy this week who's starting 13th is going to get you inside the top 5. So you're going to get all his placement points. And if he winds up leading, a majority of the laps, or at least a quarter of the laps or something, he's going to give you a ton of points there. And then I talked about him.
Quick thing on Chase Elliott, I was just looking at the head-to-heads over on FanDuel. Chase Elliott versus Kevin Harvick. Chase Elliott's -110, where Kevin Harvick's -116. So you're getting a better price on Chase Elliott. So if you're with Brian and you expect that top 5 finish, we've seen with Harvick this year, he's been fine, but he hasn't popped up and been elite yet. This might be a good spot to kind of fade Kevin Harvick a little bit.
Yeah, dude. Like I said, I'm all in on Chase Elliott this week, but that'll probably backfire and that'll kill me. All right. On to Logano. Like I said, you're probably going to want to fade him this week because I have him in my lineup. But I mean, the last 4 races here have been third, 11th, and 2nd. So this is one of the tracks where he does really excel at. And I think that starting from the 6th spot, I think he has a good opportunity to move up near the lead of the race rather early and lead a lot of the laps. I think he's got the kind of car and the kind of driver he is kind of conducive to this kind of track. Austin Dillon. No, go ahead.
No, I'm agreeing with you on Chase Elliott.
Yeah. And then on to Austin Dillon. I already talked about him. I think he's just been kind of, lying there in the weeds after he got knocked out of the playoffs. I was really interested to see how he was going to respond, and he raced rather good there, and he's got some pretty good success at this track. Like I said, I love him to finish top 10. He's starting 19th, so there you go. That's double-digit movement points right there at 8,400. And then my last guy, Corey LaJoie. I've talked about him on numerous occasions. This dude just continues to put money in the bank for people that roster him at DK. I mean, when you're talking about a guy that's as cheap as he is, he's had over 20 DK points at 8 consecutive races. How can you not want to roster that for $5,500?
Yeah, no, I'm 100% on board. And my initial first pass through, he made the cut. I really feel like a stars and scrub approach is the move this week. I'm doing much of the same as I threw up my core, and as you can see, I start with Mr. Kyle Busch, 11.5. I'm huge into Busch. Starting 15th. I know he's the most expensive driver, but I genuinely think he can win this race. I think he'll be super competitive. You get that place differential. I think he could lead laps at the end. And I think he will absolutely reward those who used him. Truex, I'm going back to the well. I'm a little underwhelmed on him after last week. I feel like he was kind of in that second tier. He was there, but he was never really there, if that makes sense. He was really in contention for that top 5 spot, sort of a top 3 spot, but I never felt like he could win the race. And so I will go back to the well there. He starts in number 3rd spot. I think he has a chance to lead some laps early, get some of those dominator points, and then be in the conversation at the end of the race. I went with the dynamic duo and Daniel Suarez and Eric Jones. It feels dirty, and I don't love it, but both drivers have a history of performing well at this track. Suarez, we've seen, especially this season, on some of these shorter tracks, perform really well. And Eric Jones also, just has kind of popped at some of these little tracks. And both guys, when you're spending up for Busch, when you're spending up for Truex, you have to find value. You have to save money. Eric Jones is starting 31st. I'm hoping for a top 20-ish finish. Suarez, I'm hoping he can get maybe into that kind of 15 to 17 range. If nothing else, just kind of be in that top 20 and not absolutely destroy me. And as I mentioned, with my first pass through, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex, Austin Dillon, Daniel Suarez, Eric Jones, and Corey LaJoie is my first run through things.
I can definitely get behind that. I mean, it's hard for me to go back with Suarez and Jones, just especially Eric Jones, knowing he has just.
He's been so all over the map. There's been some where he's popped. There's been some where he's been absolute mess. And it might be a move where you really want to play one of them, maybe not both of them in the same lineup. But like I said, if you want to get elite options into your lineup, you're going to have to find cheaper guys that you feel comfortable with. And for me, those are the names.
I will say on Eric Jones, this is his worst starting position since the Daytona Road Course, where he started 37th and he wound up finishing 14th in that race. But after that, he's only finished outside of the top 30 twice. So, I mean, at least you're going to get one movement spot guaranteed here with him. And as long as he doesn't crash out of the race, if he can, like you said, if he's going to finish inside, mid 20s, that's going to be a pretty good value for the kind of driver and where he's starting from.
Yeah. So at Richmond this year, he started 30th and finished 19th. When he starts inside the top 20, he tends to not do very well. But even like his last 4 races, started 30th, finished 19th. Martinsville this year was a mess. Started 16th, finished 30th. Martinsville the year before started 19th, finished 12th. Bristol the year before started 20th, finished 3rd. Bristol in 2020 started 16th, finished 11th. Like, there's been a lot on these short tracks where he's moved up enough where if he moves up into that kind of high teens, low 20, high 20s, low teens, I'll be very happy with him and whatnot. You got to bear with us tonight. We're recording this post Cowboy game. Brian had to watch his boys. That game was a really fun race or a really fun game, and enjoyed the hell out of it. I know it didn't end the way Brian wanted, but it was a fun watch and great start to the season.
Yeah, no, that was good. But we're here to talk NASCAR, not football.
Yep.
Yeah, I would be glad to watch Eric Jones drive really well, especially knowing that he secured the Richard Petty driver's seat for next year. So he knows that he's secure in his position. And like you said, like he's looked pretty good. I mean, minus the engine issues last weekend. Prior to that, he had 3 straight inside the top 20. So, I mean, I don't fault you for going back to him, but like we said, if we're both on a driver, stay away. But if one of us is and one of us isn't, it's probably good.
Yep. When we split it up, it usually tends to work a little bit better. Was there any other drivers that we haven't mentioned it from a DK perspective that garnered some interest for you, or that you're gonna?
I was looking at William Byron, but I can't play him 2 weeks in a row, especially it's kind of the homer play for me.
Byron is tempting. Byron is tempting. Matt DiBenedetto is tempting if you're looking for something in that 8K range. I think he's been a much improved driver, and the Wood brothers are trying to get that win. He makes a little bit of sense. If you want to pivot off of Austin Dillon, who might be a little more popular, I don't know. The Chastain Buescher duo, I feel like they always do better than I give them credit for, but I never play them, so I'm not really sure what to do.
I will say Bubba Wallace, for all of his inefficiencies at just this year and what he hasn't been as good as what people would think. He's been racing pretty damn well his last, it's been 8 races now where he's finished, 24th or better. The last 4 have been 13th, 19th, 3rd, 21st. So they're not great finishes, but a guy who's starting 27th, who has the ability to run in the mid-teens, even get near the top 10 for 6,300. That's really good. It's really good value for that. That's kind of me loving the 2311 brand, but at the same time, he has been a driver who near the back half of this year is starting to ascend and get better. The team is starting to find their groove. And I do think that he's a guy who could surprise over these last few races during the playoffs as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good call. I'm digging into Ross Chastain a little bit more. He's been super awesome or absolutely horrendous. So he might be a name to kind of, if you were looking for a little bit of a wild card in your GPP lineups. He's been awful at these tracks, but at 7,200. Like if you look at like the last two races, 69 points at the Cookout race, 40 points at Coke Zero, 49 at Foxwoods, 31 at Go Bowling. Like there's been some opportunities for him to perform. He's also got some negatives in there, so you never know. But at 7K, like he's somebody that if you want to start with Bush or Larson or Elliott or like Logano, some of those names at the top, he opens up a lot of things towards the bottom.
Yeah, I also think that this race is we could wind up being the same situation as we were last week, where if you have Larson and Hamlin in a lineup and you're able to squeeze in some cheaper guys, you could wind up taking home the cake again, because Larson, like we said at the top of the show with betting, he's been so good. You can kind of throw all previous results out the window for tracks that he wasn't successful at, and you can kind of peg those to either lesser teams. He wasn't as mature of a driver. I mean, he clearly has the best car in the series right now. He's continuing to lead the fastest laps in every single race. So Larson for me, even starting first, I'll probably have a lineup with him there, just thinking that he jumps out like he did last weekend and he's leading the majority of the day. And then maybe even back it up with Hamlin and go super cheap in the back end.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you could do Chastain, LaJoy, Eric Jones, Chastain, LaJoy, Daniel Suarez, and you can jam in Larson, you could jam in Bush, and then you can get to one of like the high 7, low 8K range guys.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun race, especially too when you had 3 guys crash out who were in the playoffs.
Yeah,
they know what they got to do now.
Make sure you pay attention. The race is Saturday night, not Sunday. NASCAR is kind of bouncing around, obviously, with the NFL season getting underway. They're kind of taking advantage of that Saturday night race. So make sure your lineups are in, make sure your bets are in before Saturday, or by Saturday afternoon. 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 for us out here on the West Coast. Brian, I think we talked some DFS. I think we talked some betting. I think there's one thing and one thing only. What is your best bet for the for the Federated Auto Parts 400?
Oh man, this one was a lot more difficult, just with everything leading up to it and all the stuff that happened last weekend.
And you hit a winner, so you need to keep that thing rolling.
Well, I'm gonna stick with my guns here, which was my initial thought. It's slightly safe, but I really do think that Austin Dillon, outside of missing the playoffs, is one of the best drivers, younger drivers in the circuit. So Austin Dillon, top 10, plus 130. That's going to be my best bet for the week.
I like that number a lot. I like that call a lot. I'm going to play a little safer too. I'm going to go Kyle Busch, top 5. That top 3 number, that outright number, both very compelling, but even money, or minus 110,
basically even money,
top 5 for Kyle Busch, who's been so impressive at this track. I think makes a ton of sense, and give yourself that flexibility, maybe bet a little bit more or spread out your bet and take some outrights and whatnot. But I think that number is very palatable, and one I will be targeting myself. That's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. Let us know down in the comments who your favorite bet is for this week, who you think's going to win. Give us some names. We're always looking for money. Good luck on DK. Good luck with your bets. Enjoy the race. Enjoy NFL and college and world and then soccer. I mean, like, this is going to be just a sports weekend. I'm very excited.
Yes, it is going to be fantastic.
Can't wait. That's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert.